Hello, everyone. Welcome to Love That Lasts, the relationship podcast sponsored by the ACU Faulkner Center for Marriage and Family. On today's episode, Loving and Living Fearlessly, we have a special treat for everyone, this wonderful couple, Jamie and Donna Winship. Jamie and Donna are speakers, authors, and co founders of Identity Exchange, and they spent more than 25 years living and working in Southeast Asia and the Middle East after leaving behind the American dream to follow God's calling. Through their experiences serving in predominantly Muslim regions, they developed a passion for helping people discover their God given identity, live fearlessly, and experiencing the transforming power of God's kingdom. With Jamie's former career as a Metro Washington, D.C. area police officer and Donna's background in education, together they have trained leaders across business, education, ministry, law enforcement, and professional sports, and have helped to create transformational identity resources. Jamie is the author of Living Fearless and a newly released book, The War of Worldviews: Choosing Connection in a Culture of Separation. So, welcome to Love That Lasts, Jamie and Donna. Thank you so much for taking some time to sit down with me today and have a conversation.
It's our pleasure,
Yeah,
Heidi. Thanks for
Ab-
inviting us.
thanks for having us.
Absolutely. And for our listeners, you guys were on the Abilene Christian University campus a few months back. Could you tell us
Yeah.
kind of what you were doing here on campus?
Yeah, we were invited by the president, Phil Schubert, and also Stephen Johnson, and they were giving us a tour. Jamie was speaking in chapel, and we were just talking about these principles of identity and what we do at Identity Exchange, principles of understanding deep transformation and identity at the identity level, and just how we can incorporate some of that in what is happening at ACU.
Well, it's wonderful. It was
Yeah.
so well received. And so when we started looking at guests for Love That Last, we felt like you both would have such a wonderful story to share and bring some unique insights as you do this work together. And so we're going to unpack some of that today as we get started.
Great.
So, your story is really pretty remarkable. And I think it's going to be a treat for listeners to hear a bit about that. To kind of set the stage, you left behind what many would consider the American dream, and you moved your family several years back to Southeast Asia and the Middle East. And what was it about God's calling in your life that gave you the courage to take that step into the unknown?
That is a fantastic question.
Well, I
Uh,
mean, can I jump in? I'll
Go
so
for it.
so one thing is the way that we look at a lot of things, Don and I as a couple, is it's not so much leaving anything as much as we're being invited into something else. It's very important to us whenever we move, and we've moved how many times? And
25 times.
25 times.
20, and you've been married how long?
We're coming up on our 43rd anniversary
Yeah.
in June.
Fantastic.
Oh, in 10 days.
Yeah.
Oh, well, congratulations. That's
Yeah,
Thank you.
thank
wonderful.
you.
Mhm.
So for our kids and everything, I mean, that's a lot of moving and it's internationally. And so we've never, until just recently, we've never lived anywhere longer than 4 years ever before we move around. And so, but we've never left one place to go to another without believing that we were being invited to the next thing. Some people leave places to try and find something new or they're trying to get away from something, but for us it's always been just always asking the Lord, are you the one inviting us to live in the Middle East? Are you the one inviting us to live in Indonesia? Because if he's inviting us, then that takes a lot of the fear out of it. A lot of the transitions are always hard, moving's always hard, awful. But to know that you're being invited into something that God is orchestrating um, fills you with a sense of faith, and faith is the substance of the things you hope for. It's a hopeful move.
Right.
It's not like we're going into a horrifying, terrible situation. We're just going to try and weather our way through it. But it's like, wow, the Lord's invited us, not only us, but our kids. So even when we're praying and saying, Lord, we have three boys, Lord, raise these kids to be men of God, followers of you. And his invitation to us is, well, I want them raised in Indonesia then. Or I want them,
Wow.
this part of their life, for them, for their benefit, they need to be in Baghdad, or they need to understand what life in a conflict zone is like. Those are all blessings to them, of God developing them into really pretty fearless risk takers, which they are as grown married adults now. And a couple of them still live in the Middle East. I mean, they've
Okay.
stayed there, they've returned there after college. Um, so that's what takes a lot of the pressure and the fear out of it, is knowing together, not just me having a vision and Donna following or whatever,
Right.
but it's both of us saying, this is how I see myself invited into what God has for us.
I love that word that you're using, Jamie, invitation, because sometimes when people talk about God calling them to something, I think if we're all honest, there may be sometimes reactions from people that are like, oh, okay, there's a calling, but man, I'm not quite sure, or I'm uncertain, or I'm afraid. But I
Right.
love this word invitation because it speaks to something that is almost like a beautiful anticipation, right? Like
It
when
is.
you're
It is.
invited into something, there is something kind of beautiful to await with that. And that's a wonderful way to kind of cast that perspective, as you both have kind of claimed that around that calling.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it wasn't like emotional decisions made at an event where you get called forward or anything like that.
Right.
It was over really for me a couple of years. In one context, I come from a Jewish background, didn't come to know the Lord until I was in university and college, and so always just had this burden to share the gospel in a way that people like me who never heard it and who are honestly offended by the name of Jesus, offended by the word Christianity, always had a burden to share that in places that would be hard to share it.
Right.
And Jamie
Right.
was coming from a different perspective because he was coming from that law enforcement perspective. And the highest honor for him, the highest pinnacle of his career would to be doing that in an overseas context. So
Right.
we're like miles apart in how we wanted to get there. And we had to wait till the Lord was ready for that to converge somehow.
Yeah,
And
that's
that,
beautiful.
yeah. And then the invitation finally came and it came together. I think that's really important that
Yeah, I'm glad. Thank you for kind of sharing that because I think for our listeners, it's kind of helpful to get some context. Like it wasn't just this knee-jerk reaction, like you said, or just
exactly.
an emotional response, but it really was a process, it sounds like. I was curious, sometimes in marital dynamics, we might not be at the same place at the same time with our spouse, maybe in how we see God working and maybe in how God is calling us. Did this calling to move overseas kind of happen to you both at different points? Was one of you needing to be a little bit more convinced along the way, just to kind of give perspective to kind of how that unplayed and played out for you both?
Yeah. Well, it's interesting. It's not just about, going overseas and doing something. It's about like sort of every decision we make in life, period. And we're very opposite each other, very on every emotional identity, strengths finders, everything. We're total opposites.
So, are you
We're
kind of one of these classic opposites attract kind of people?
Yeah, what's it's funny is that even like in some of them where they're like, here's the person you should probably never work with, or this is the person that's going to cause you the greatest frustration, or your nemesis. I'm always her nemesis and she's mine, like on all these tests. And so, and that, it's helpful to understand that and for sure. But so our joke is my personality is to like when there's,
was going to say, you always say,
yeah, I always say yes to
and
pretty
I
much
always
anything.
say no. So together
Okay.
we say
Yeah, we just say yo
yo.
Yeah.
because we know
Very good.
both. So I'm gonna like try and speed it up, and Donna's gonna try and slow it down, both from our strengths.
Right.
So we joke all the time that if I didn't marry Donna, she'd be super rich and bored out of her mind, and if I didn't marry her, I would be dead. period, dead.
Right.
And
But
so
you
that's
balance each other, it sounds
right,
like,
the
right? Your
balance.
strengths. Hmm.
So then it's we knew that you know if God's going to invite, as Donna said earlier, if God's going to invite her into overseas, whatever, and me, He does it in different ways. Right. So I didn't even ever think that the way God invited her was going to be the same for me or vice versa.
Okay. Yeah.
So because Donna was new into the church as a believer, you know, because she grew up in the synagogue, but the whole missions thing to her was super appealing. And we went to a really big missions church and they talked about missions all the time. And so when she understand the concept of missions, she's like, let's go to Israel and I mean, let's go to my people and let's figure out how to get there. And so, and I was willing. I was like, Lord, I'll go wherever you invite me to, but you have to invite me. Like
Okay.
you have to do it, not Donna, and I don't invite her. And so she would go to the missions conferences by herself
Mm.
and go forward by herself. And she would just say to the Lord, I'll go. I'm ready to go. And she did that for 5 years.
Mm.
For me, I loved my job as a police officer. I loved my ability to interact with people. I didn't need to go anywhere else. I mean, I was in it all the time.
Right.
However, I was open to it. And so I just kept telling her, like, I know I appreciate your desire to go and I respect it. And she's typically spiritually ahead of me on everything anyway. So I assumed I'm going to get this invitation at some point. But because I grew up in church culture and it was negative to me. And so
Okay.
I never felt like I've heard this stuff my whole life.
He's seen a million people go forward at
Right.
missions conference and then they never go, or they go and it ends up
Falls
in
apart.
Yeah.
disaster.
It
Yeah.
doesn't go well. Right.
So for me, I was totally open. We had missionaries in our house, loved them. I know the scriptures, but I was like, when someone dials 911, that's my mission field. Like I'm going every 10-hour shift. That's what you're doing. But so then in my fifth year, after Donna going forward for 5 years, I got recruited by the State Department. And so I went to meet with them, and they basically said to me, you have what we're looking for. Would you be willing to do what we do in another country? And I
Okay.
knew right then that was my altar call. I knew that was
Okay.
my missions conference right there with those guys. They were calling me forward, and the Lord's saying, now I want you to come forward and we're going to go. And so
Mm.
when I came home and told Donna, you know, I just got offered this job to go live in the Muslim world. It was different than what she had in her mind of what going, you know, we go forward and
Sure.
you know, you do the missions thing. This was different, but I was super excited to go. And so then we just saw how God was just putting our different identities and vision together in this
Right.
beautiful path forward so that she felt very true into her call, and so did I. And so that's how we went through the process, because when you get out there, especially the places we went, and the government is collapsing while you're there, and you know, and you decide, well, God invited us, we're staying, we're not leaving, and the whole city is on fire and being looted and there's no way out. You Donna can't be there because she's following my vision, or I can't be there
Right.
because I'm following her conviction. Those don't stand when you're in, you know, or when your team gets killed like it happened in Baghdad. It's like you need to be there because Christ himself invited you.
Mm.
That's what
Mm.
makes that, and that's also what holds our relationship together, is not her going on my vision or me going on hers, but both of us responding to the vision Christ has for each of us, and it just draws us together as it
Yes.
moves us forward.
That is a powerful testimony. And what's beautiful as you unpack that is the different ways that God was working in each of your stories, right? And how it looked a little bit different, but how it did merge together into something that you were both called to, but it was
That's right.
happening at different times and in different
Yes.
ways
Right.
along the way. And one thing I want to just comment, just getting to visit with you guys and not having a history with you, it's really apparent that you have such a trust in God as individuals, but also with your marriage to say, okay, we can be okay with the fact that God's working in different ways, but we trust and wait for his invitation to see kind of what's next. And that was I think it's a beautiful testimony of just kind of a trust in God, but also a trust in each other as you're kind of in a place of waiting and discerning in this journey. Another question I have kind of related to those years when you were living abroad, how do you think going and doing that work really just even shaped your own faith walk as individuals? We'll talk about the marriage in a second, but how do you think it really shaped and maybe transformed your own faith walk, your own identity as followers of Jesus?
Well, I would say initially when we first went, we were only 30 years old. We left our careers. I was an educator, elementary school teacher, and you heard what Jamie said. And we did go to graduate school, went to seminary before we went. And, you're leaving everything behind. And this was in 1990, no iPhone, no FaceTime, no internet, no Instagram. We were very isolated. We were living on a small island, but 2.5 million people. And, you're leaving all of your support systems behind.
Mm,
When we would write a letter home, it would take 3 weeks to get there. And
wow.
so if they wrote us back the same day they got the letter and put it in the mail, it would take 3 weeks to get to us. So there's 6 weeks there where,
Such a different, yeah, that's a
yeah,
really
such
good perspective. Much
So
different than
we,
today.
yeah, different than
Mhm.
today where you can FaceTime or Zoom
Right.
or, do it through WhatsApp. There's so many ways to communicate and it's instant. It's instantaneous. And and we were trained in a certain way. Jamie worked at a university. I was doing literacy out in the villages for the New Zealand government. We always had jobs in our careers that we were trained in, and that was our focus, those people. But it was just really hard. You get there, the culture's new, the language is new, and no matter how prepared you are, you're not prepared for what
Right.
you're going to experience. And it really, it took a toll on us. And the people also, as much as we tried to love them, they didn't respond the way we thought they were going to respond. Here we are to share the good news of the gospel of the kingdom of God,
Mm,
and they didn't want it. So either it's not good news or we're sharing it wrong. And it
mm,
took us 4 years to figure that out. Thought we were there our first time we were there almost 5 years. And we had three little kids, five,
right.
3,
As
and 10 months.
parents.
Yeah, five,
Mm,
3, and 10 months. And so all the doubts and all the fears come, we go confidently. We know God's invited us into this. We've done all the trainings, and you get there and none of it works.
And there's
right.
nobody to talk to. There's nobody to call. It's just me and Donna.
And we had a real small team. There were
Mhm.
7 of us.
Mm.
But And then Jamie's like, Mr. Yes over here is like, why did we do this? And I'm like, we're staying. We are going to figure this out.
Mm.
That's just our personality. And so yeah, it was really hard. But now looking back, we went through a 10-year process of transformation.
Wow.
And we always talk about now that we are looking back on it, transformation is about order, disorder, reorder. And you
Mm.
can't get to the reorder till you go through the disorder. It's like life, crucifixion, resurrection.
Right.
And you have to go through the crucifixion to get to the resurrection. You're going along your life and something happens, and
Right.
you have to learn how to die to that old way of thinking, old way of living, old way of seeing things, old way of seeing God, old way of seeing yourself. This is what it means.
How did you dig deep? I mean, in those
Mhm.
places where there was fear and uncertainty. You believe in God's calling and the invitation, but wow, it was kind of not meeting maybe what your expectations were of what all
Uh,
this was going to look like. So how did you kind of dig deep in those places?
yeah, we didn't try to dig deep. God threw us in the pit, I would
Okay.
say.
He dug deep.
He dug
He
deep
dug deep and you just had to
because
hold on.
because this is how we would pray. Take the fear away, take the fear
Mm,
away, take all these external things that we felt like were hurting us. Take them away. God, please take them away. But here in reality, God, take us through the fear. Don't
Okay.
take the fear away because the fear will always come back and we'll always be afraid of it. But if God takes us through the fear and He's
Right.
with us in it, it's not like we're going through it alone.
Right.
Take us through the fear, and on the other side of it, we have authority over the fear and we're never
Yes.
afraid of it again. And
And that's some, yeah.
that's the process He was taking us
And
through.
that's the process of transformation that you're
That's right.
talking about,
Exactly.
right?
Exactly.
Absolutely.
And most people bail out. Most of us don't want to go through the disorder part. And so
Right.
we'll try and go back to the order. Even though the order wasn't good or didn't work or worked once, instead of going through the wilderness, so to speak, through the disorder into the beautiful reordering, we get
Yes.
scared and we try and get back out of it.
Mm,
And this
mm,
is why marriages stagnate and fail because the transition and the disorder scares people. We want control.
yeah.
We don't want to be in a place where I would say at night to Donna on this little island because there's no way off it. I mean, there's no way off that island. And I
Right.
would say to her, if people broke into our house to kill us all, there's nobody to call. There's nothing we can do about it. And when you're in that, I think in that place of being where God's like, yeah, you don't have any other crutches except me.
Mm,
And is that enough for you? And frankly, it wasn't. Like, no,
right.
I need to be able to call the police. I need to be able to call, like, we can't just live with just you,
Right.
right? Because
You
that
wanted some
makes
more
you,
safety mechanisms in
that's
place.
right. But
Right.
then we realized, getting arrested there and all that stuff that went on, that you don't need any of the other stuff.
Mm,
And that
mm,
takes time. And you've got to go, as Donna said, the disorder and your deep fear. And I think our deep fear was we're powerless and alone, which is, I think, the
mm.
deepest fear of every human is that you're in a situation where you
True.
feel powerless and alone. And in that place, you'll perish until you
Yes.
realize we were never powerless and we've never been alone.
Mm,
Once you grasp that, you can pretty much walk through anything because Jesus, as you said earlier, he's not sending us, he's asking us to follow him.
right. Right.
That's different than being sent out by yourself and like God was like sent us and he's back there and we're out here. He said,
Right.
I'm going to work on this island and among these beautiful people, and I want you to come with me.
Yes.
That's a very different feeling than good luck, let me know how it goes.
Well, and now that you had that perspective that Donna mentioned, like, okay, it was this 10-year transformation process. I want to go back to that word invitation that you used, at the onset when God was inviting you into this work. You didn't know what was going to lie ahead, right? But you did step into it in faith, obviously had to face fears and uncertainties. But I also think it sounds like also this invitation from God to be transformed,
Yes.
right? Like through this process, it was an invitation not only to go overseas, but an invitation to transform you through the process of having to let go of a lot of things you couldn't have control over or a lot of your, safety mechanisms that you had to kind of do without and really come face to face with a trust in God and be transformed in that trust process. Yeah,
Yeah,
wow.
we would laugh and say, "This is who's this for? Is it for them or for us? Like, well, are we here
Right,
for them or for us?" And the answer is both.
right,
And Donna says it
right,
all the time when we're on the field and people come to work with us. She's like, "Listen, this is about you being transformed. Don't think you have
right,
some magic to tell them. This is about you being transformed in front of them and them watching you be transformed and you sharing with them what's going on inside of you. That's the
right.
beauty of the gospel." Yeah, and that was hard to learn.
Well, and I think sometimes in moments of life, whether it's your story of, being asked to go overseas or other people's stories where God's calling them to something different, there's kind of that question that we all can kind of bump up against is how much transformation will we really allow to happen in our lives, right? Is there a limit to that? And are we willing to trust God in this process?
Yep.
What about your marriage? You talk about your faith being transformed. How do you think your marriage was shaped just through some of these ups and downs that you experienced with this calling abroad?
Yeah, I, well, What do you think?
No, go
I
ahead.
mean, I'm not gonna lie. I'm not gonna lie. We spent our fifth wedding anniversary in a training school, a missionary training school in bunk beds with our three kids under us. I
That's not real
mean,
romantic as far as
yeah,
like a,
we
getaway.
we were just laughing. We spent our 40th anniversary a few years ago on a bus with 25 teenagers all night on a bus in Romania trying to get to the Hungarian border so
Wow.
that we could get across to get to the airport in Budapest. And we were just laughing at all our remembering different anniversaries. Um, yes, how did it shape our marriage? We had awesome, wonderful times in beautiful tropical paradise. And
Mm,
we had really hard times of like, why are you doing this? Why are we here? What are we doing at the same time? But I will say that from the very beginning, Jamie and I were committed to God and committed to one another. And the things that we know now about what we do at Identity Exchange, how to really hear from God and discover your identity and work through processes, equipped with tools to work through processes when you do feel afraid, when you do
right.
feel like you're not good enough. We didn't know that back then. That's what God was leading us to in that 10 years. Um, and so just standing firm, I just remember that Ephesians chapter 6 passage, stand firm
Mm,
against the scheme of the enemy, and just always coming back together at the end of the day and processing and being committed to one another and not letting anything come between us.
mm,
Because things did come between us because we are really, really different in how he's an internal processor. I'm an external processor. Just
right.
we're opposite in every way. And so not letting things come between us like that. And when you go
You're
through hard times, in the
right.
middle of the hard time, it's horrible.
Right.
But when you get to the other side, it's that order, disorder, reorder. It draws you closer, closer together.
And I think that's something for anyone listening to this podcast they can pull from. They don't have to necessarily be overseas to kind of see what you're talking about, right? Is that even in marriage, we're not going to be on the same page about everything, our different personalities, our different styles of relating, communicating, like you talked about, Donna. But a message that I hear coming out really loud and clear from you is there was this commitment to God, to each other. But another word that comes to my mind is your perseverance within your commitment.
Mhm.
Commitment is not just this word, but it's also about when it's put to test, when it's
Yeah.
challenging, when it's hard, how do we persevere to be able to maintain that commitment? And obviously, what you're talking about here is that process of
Yes.
commitment and the due diligence to keep on pursuing each other as you are doing that with God.
Yeah, and one thing, Heidi, that we learned as the years went on is that our current circumstance, something comes between us, we get in an argument, which we never do
Never.
anymore, that our current circumstance was not really the source of our pain,
That's a big one.
Okay. Right.
but that it's coming from a belief system that we learned in our childhood.
Okay.
So, for instance, Jamie talks to me a certain way, and I would say, don't do that. That makes me feel so guilty. I feel like you're accusing me.
Mm,
And he would look at me and say, I can't make you feel guilty. You already feel guilty. That's
mm,
already inside of you.
mm.
So, in other words, it's like a trigger. So, you have a feeling that leads to a thought that's coming from a belief
Right.
system, and then you react to it. So somewhere in my past, that guilt is already there, and he's saying something or doing something that's digging it up. And you have to recognize that when you
Mm,
feel that negative emotion in an altercation or even just a simple interaction with your spouse, that it's probably not coming from your spouse. He says something or does something, and vice versa, that makes me feel unworthy or not good enough or
Right.
like I'm disappointing him.
You
I
know,
probably already have that belief system from
right.
something else,
Yeah.
right? And this is triggering it to come up. You know this as a therapist.
Well, no, I was like, man, this is so right on because I often talk about this with clients. And then sometimes when I do marriage retreats for churches, is this family of origin piece that your past can function in the present,
Oh boy.
right?
Exactly.
Yes.
Right. And the point is, it's true for all of us.
Right.
And being able, though, to be aware, right, when maybe something is getting triggered and it has not, like you said, what's kind of going on in the moment is not really what's going on,
Right.
but it's how
Right.
that past can be functioning in the present and to be more aware, bring it into the light and be able to kind of deal with it very appropriately.
Yeah.
Jamie,
And that,
yeah, go ahead, please.
no, I was just going to say, yeah, that kind of self-awareness, that kind of God conscious asking the spirit, like, why is that bothering me? Instead of,
Exactly.
and then because my mom used to always tell me I was a disappointment all the time. And that's one of the biggest things I struggle with is believing I'm a disappointment. I'm 66.
Mhm.
Time doesn't take away a lie,
Right.
right? Only truth
Right.
can. And so I'm very aware of that in myself, that if Donna says something to me or anyone that makes me feel like, I disappointed them, it's very deeply painful to me.
Mm,
And so to cope with that in the past, I had all kinds of coping mechanisms like overachievement, whatever. And now I know that the reason I can relax and listen to someone say, "Hey, we probably could do this way," or "Is this another way to think about it?" is they're not saying I'm a disappointment. I'm saying I'm a disappointment,
right. It's what you're
right?
telling
And
yourself.
then when I
Right.
react against, when I like push back against, oh, you're making me feel like a disappointment, then it causes the other person in their woundedness to push back against me, and then you have conflict. But it was so fascinating when we switched our way of sharing our faith from like, here's the 4 points of the plan of salvation to, wow, I know you're a Muslim, but as a Muslim, you're a human and you have things inside of you that have hurt you and wounded you. And the way I'm talking to you is creating fear in you
Mm,
that's causing you to push back again. You're not pushing back against the gospel. You're pushing back against the woundedness that you. And once we adjusted that, it was really beautiful how Muslims, anybody responded because we were speaking from wholeness into
right.
wholeness.
I
But we
love
had
that.
to experience that
Yeah.
first
Right.
before we could do it with somebody else. You can't give away what you don't
Exactly.
have.
Yeah.
Very
Right.
true.
Yeah.
I wanted to touch on something because this relates to some of the stuff that you both kind of work on with within identity exchange and stuff that you've written about. Jamie, you make this case that we can kind of have this relentless pursuit of safety, comfort, control, but it really isn't protecting us. It's actually keeping us from the life we were made for. Could you unpack that a little bit?
Well, yeah, it's kind of like what we're saying. So it's for a human being to think that in this reality that we're in, that there's any kind of real certainty or control is delusional.
Hmm.
Like it's not possible. And so what the person is doing is they're committing themselves to a pursuit of something that's entirely false. So this is why Jesus said, if you he who seeks to save their own life will lose it. Why? Because you can't save your own life and you'll lose yourself in the pursuit of something that can never be accomplished.
Right.
Right? But to live other focused, self-emptying, unconditional love, even for your enemy, that's where security comes from. That's where a sense of, oh, this is why I'm here. So anytime I try and accumulate money to protect myself, military weapons to protect myself, power positions, none of it gives security.
Right.
None of it can produce security. And so what it does is it ultimately just frustrates you because I've got all this, I've sacrificed everything to get all this, and I still feel powerless and alone.
It's never enough.
Right.
And
Right.
so and so
Can't be filled.
it's destructive. It's self-destructive, which is what Jesus is saying. This pursuit will destroy you, right? But to live
Mhm.
connected to God, yourself and others, is where security and peace comes from. It's like I
Mm.
can't do all this by myself, but I could do it with Donna. But I
Right.
could do it with my neighbor. I only can do it with Christ.
Right.
That's where the security comes from. And then what that means is then we can encounter together the mysteries, the beautiful mysteries of life. What's it like to take your 5 and 10 month old over to grow up in a Muslim country? I don't know. That's a huge mystery. But it's either a beautiful, beautiful mystery that your kids will always thank you for taking them into,
Mm.
or it can be something so horrifying, I'll lock them down in suburbia so they never have to face it and they'll be embittered because
Mm.
all we know is this circle that we grew up in and we're afraid to go out of it.
Right.
Right? And so I think that's mystery is what humans love. It scares us because we can't control it, but it's what we really long for. And Jesus wants to walk us into the mystery of who he is, the mystery of who each other are, the mystery of who our neighbor is, and the mystery of life with him is
Mm.
so beautiful.
And that's that invitation again
That's
that
the
you're
invitation.
talking about. As we think about our listeners with a podcast that's focusing a lot about building a love that lasts as followers of Jesus and talking about even the notion of fear. What would be encouragement that you would give to our listeners who maybe do recognize, as they look a little bit kind of under the surface and they see that maybe fear is having too much power in their lives and their marriage? And it could be fill in the blank. It could be something fearful about a move. It could be something fearful about, just well-being or safety or finances. But whatever it is, there's a fear factor at play. What would be your encouragement to our listeners who recognize this but are not really sure what to do about it?
Well, two things come to my mind. Fear, at the bottom of fear means you're not trusting. So, who are you not trusting? You're not trusting God. You're not trusting yourself. You're not trusting the other person.
Okay, good.
And to break that cycle, you have to enter in, I think, and understand true forgiveness, extending it and releasing it, extending it to the other person and releasing yourself in whatever it is that you need to receive forgiveness for so that you can regain that trust factor. Because think of how many things with the other person go unspoken. Oh, he didn't mean it. Oh, that's okay. And it just gets swept under the rug, but you're
Right.
building this debit, right, of things instead of building a credit of greatness, of love. You're building this debit of grudges and they don't just get swept under the rug. The
Right. They
rug suddenly
accumulate.
has a big bump in it. And then you get mad at God. Why is God doing this to me? So, of course, God
Mm,
never needs our forgiveness, but you lose your trust. And
right.
it's not that God's doing it to you, it's that we're making choices that are unhealthy for ourselves. God's right there waiting to bless you. We have every spiritual blessing in the heavenly realms, right? And we're
Right.
not receiving it. Something's blocking it, and it's usually related to that trust and forgiveness. And forgiveness just means to cancel all effects of a debt. It doesn't mean
Mm,
saying you're sorry. It doesn't mean, oh, that's okay, you didn't mean it.
correct.
But what did you owe me that you didn't give me? You can't go out and repay it. We can't go back in the past and repay it. But I can cancel the effects of the debt and the Lord can repay me. The Lord can give me what I needed from that moment that you weren't able to give me. And I can receive it from the Lord. And so
Mm.
you owe me nothing. I'm not going to hold that against you any longer.
I love
Then
that
you're
view
clear.
of
Yeah.
forgiveness. Yeah,
Then
that's
then you're then you're clear and you're open to discuss it, and then you can rebuild the trust from there. But I think we think forgiveness means saying, "I'm sorry, I
no
didn't
big
mean
deal.
it. No big deal. Oh, that's okay." And that doesn't get you anywhere. You have to enter into that process with the Lord.
Mm,
And it's the same for yourself. you know, doing that with the Lord for whatever you feel like, because in your true identity, you know, well, in your true identity, it's not that you're doing bad things, immoral acts. It's
Right.
that you've wandered from love. We're in this alignment of love, Father, Son, Spirit, you. And
Right.
we wander from that love and we wander from who he created us to be. And that's what sin really is. You separate from God yourselves and the other. And so if we don't think of it as sin, like doing something bad, we think of it as separation. I acted
Yeah.
out of separateness
Right.
and it
Right.
hurt somebody and it hurt myself, right?
Right.
So I'm doing something other than love. And
I think
so,
about the verse that says perfect love drives out fear, right?
yeah,
That's right.
That, it love gives us a whole different direction when we are not living a life of
Yeah.
fear. And that's beautiful.
Yeah.
Anything you would
Can I
add,
say one thing
Jamie?
about that?
Please,
Sorry.
yes.
So when people don't think of forgiveness does this, but when you're with a person and they're saying, well, I think God might have invited me to live in this difficult place or whatever, and you're like, well, okay, so how does that make you feel? It makes me feel fear. Why? What are you afraid of?
Mm.
And you just keep like, tell it, what is the fear pointing to? And ultimately it gets to like, I'm pretty sure that if I go there, God's not going to be with me, or it's outside of his ability to
Oh, yeah.
protect, right?
Right.
Why would he not protect you? And it's going to come down. I'm not worth it. He doesn't see me. Maybe I'm not spiritual enough. It's all back to, well, he forgives anything that would ever make
Mm.
you seem that way. So
Mm.
the forgiveness, as Donna's saying, it just keeps the whole truth flow open.
That's well
And
said.
and
Yeah.
the fear is pointing to like, wow, your view of God is wrong. And that the fear is telling you your view of God is wrong. Your view of yourself is wrong. Your view of others is wrong. And so why are you afraid of them? Because I don't like them. Why not? And again, it's this forgiveness component that people just skip over all the time. Like, God, make me brave, give me faith. You, as Donna said, you have all that.
well, you have to go
Yeah.
into a situation.
Yes.
It's experiential. We learn through experience.
Very
As a
true.
teacher, any human being only remembers about 10% of what they read, 30% of what's taught to them, depending on what type of learner they are, visual,
Right.
audio, but they remember 100% of what they experience.
Yeah.
100%. So we consume tons of information about God,
Right.
but if you look at scripture, it's people having experiential encounters with God
Right.
that lead them to understand who he created them to be, so then they can walk in the truth of who they are into their destiny. Moses at the burning bush, Peter walking on the water, Peter at the breakfast after the resurrection,
Exactly.
Gideon hearing his identity in the cave. He's living
Right.
in a cave afraid, but he's supposed to be leading the Israelites in battle. Go in the strength you've always had. That's his real identity. But it takes the encounter
Yeah. Living it out.
to abolish the fear, hearing the angel of the Lord, you are my mighty warrior, right? It's the encounter, the experience of it.
Yeah, not theoretical. It's lived out. Absolutely. Yeah, and I want to just touch on those couple points, for our listeners that Jamie and Donna are bringing out. When fear is trying to kind of take root, bringing out these beautiful aspects of trust, but how forgiveness can really open up and flow us into a place of trusting and not living out fear.
Yeah.
Man, I tell you, I almost feel like we need a part two of this conversation because there's so much depth and richness in what you are sharing. But I know we are just about out of time. There's so much here to draw upon with thinking about your story, your life, your experiences, how you took on God's calling, this invitation to live out something bold and audacious that many may look at and say, "What on earth? I don't know if I could ever see myself doing that." But I think your story is an encouragement to listeners to really think about, how is God calling us in our lives, and how is He inviting us into places to step into and to join with Him into something big and beautiful and wonderful. Sure, there's a risk in that. There's always challenges, and maybe even having to address fear along the way, but how transformational it can be when we are trusting and letting Him guide us in this process.
Right.
Um, One thing I wanted to mention here to our listeners is certainly not to forget to check out this great, beautiful ministry and work that Jamie and Donna have with Identity Exchange. Um, can you give us the website on that? Is it just identityexchange.com?
That's it.
Okay,
Yeah.
absolutely. So much to check out there. Also, some of their great writings, Jamie's book on living fearless, and then its new book that just came out in May. Is that right,
Right.
Jamie?
That's right.
Yeah, The
Yep.
War of Worldviews, Choosing Connection in a Culture of Separation, that can be found as well. So many wonderful things as we think about this beautiful conversation around how marriage brought them together, but also this story of God's calling and work, and how you're using that work to bless others. So thank you. Thank you, Jamie. Thank you, Donna, for taking time to have conversation today as we think about helping our listeners really build a love that lasts. So for next time, we will close it out today and wishing everyone that's listening today that you may be filled with the love of God, and may that love pour into your relationships.